recording. So that way, you know, your success rate will be higher. So, you know, this would be another resource for you to look at as you're taking the sprint challenge over the weekend. If you're confused, like something with the testing or one of the CRUD operations is hanging you up, you go, oh, wait, well, I checked my projects. I didn't find the answer there. You might, you know, reach out to the lecture recording, maybe not. Here's another resource with the recording as well as live to go try and find the answer that you need to be successful and understand what's happening. So what you're going to be doing for the sprint challenge this weekend is it's actually a cool project called React Bubbles. And what React Bubbles is it's got some fancy CSS and stuff, and it takes these colors. You have to log into this. You have to protect the route and handle a token. And you get to this bubble page, and it, like all these fancy colored bubbles just randomly animate and appear. And there's a list off to the left with the color name and like their hash code for their color. And then you're going to generate ways to update that name and that hash code and delete it too. And every time you update it to a different color or delete it, the whole scene changes and resets itself up with the new information. So it's kind of neat. But mine is very cheesy. We are building just your standard issue list app. It's the Welcome to the Super React Study Group app, which is what I'm using for this is I created a mock server just like you'll see on the sprint, which the handlers, you can see the data right now. The only member is me. It's only taken in two parameters, a name and a unit. And we're going to run CRUD off of this. And it's also got the protected route status and everything in it. So we're going to test it as well. So we're going to mock the API call and do the testing just like you would have to for the sprint challenge, because you do have to test in the sprint, and it's going to be mocking an API call. So yeah, they're really pain in the butt part of that testing stuff we went through. Yeah, that's what they're going to ask you to do on the sprint. I know.
Is weekend fork?
What's that? No. They asked me specifically not to do that, because that would be, this is so close to the sprint, it would be borderline cheating.
It wouldn't be building from scratch. I see.
So yeah, it's just a recording and live. They told me not to, you know, put it out in the repo. So I listened to their wishes. So let's see here. We got this. And I'm going to go over just through the sprint documentation, because this is similar of a mirror of what it's going to be. And we're going to do the steps. So the first thing that they ask you to do is log in, you know, create your login form. And you'll see components already pre-built in the sprint, just like this. The login will be there with nothing in it. It's just basically a P tag with an error message. Yeah, they want you to build this out first. I don't really agree with that. I think the best place to start with something like this is to build your helpers. So you already know you're going to be using a protected route component, and you already know you're going to be using some kind of like Axios with auth component. They make that the second step in the sprint, and the third step, I think it should be the first. You know, get them out of the way so you can start integrating them in your components as you build them. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to start by building those first. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to close up all of these. And I got a file called helpers. It's got Axios with auth and private route in it. And this should be empty. We're going to start with Axios with auth, which is a long name. But I think I told a couple of y'all, I got so lazy and this function's so redundantly useful. I just make one and I named it API just because it was less typing. You know, I'm going to import API. So how we're going to build Axios with auth, it's just a JavaScript function. So we can say export const, and we'll call it Axios with auth. It's going to equal a function. And this function is going to return some things. But the first thing before it, you saying something, Gabriel?
Sorry about that.
No worries, man. All right. So the first thing that we know, Axios with auth is going to do exactly that. It's going to, I have a typo. It's going to handle auth. So what do we need to handle auth in the knowledge that we currently have? What's our authentication depend on? Can anybody answer that?
The token?
Exactly. It depends on a token. So let's go get the token. So I'm just going to say const token. It's going to equal local storage dot get item. And we're just going to get the item called token. So now we have the token, and now we can start building out our API call. We're going to return Axios. And the reason why we return Axios is because it then returns the promise that it creates rather than resolving it. So like when you use Axios with auth, if you notice you use Axios with auth, .get and things like that, it gives you access to all those methods that return those promises by returning that Axios method. Not so much the promises, but that method. If you actually invoked like the .get in here, all you would get was the resolution value out of it. And then you'd only be able to use it for get or post or whatnot. But by returning Axios as a whole, you get all the Axios methods attached to this function wherever you bring it in. Allows you to do the everything. So we're going to return Axios create. That's .create, I'm sorry. I can't spell tonight. And create takes an object, and it's just an object of settings. One of the reason why I create this first, and I like to use it for everything, including GET requests, is because of that base URL setting. It saves you from typing out that HTTP or HTTPS just over and over again. You can set your base route here, and then you can use your route extensions for everything else. So we're going to set up the base URL now. And if you have you should have linting, it'll almost tell you what's available to you in this create function. So we want base URL. Our base URL for this one is going to be HTTP. And this is information that you would get out of the README, obviously, for their sprint. It's going to be localhost or localhost. Localhost. Localhost 5000 is what we're hitting this one. And I'm going to go ahead and put the /API in there as well, because they almost always require that API. And now the next thing is the headers. Now the headers is where all like the information about the request is carried. Not the information that you're sending or receiving, like that you're actually going to use in your app, but it's the information like what kind of data you want back. Is there authentication? It would be in here. Is there any kind of special needs that the app has, like that endpoint has on the server side, that it needs to look at and validate and verify, like roles or things like that? They'd all be stored in the headers, because you don't want those in the body. The body is just the information that you're transferring forward and taking back in. All comes out of the body. The headers is where the actual the instructions on what to do with the data are basically coming from. And here, I like to just normally just put 2 in here right away, and I use content type. Content-type. And the reason why I put this in here is because I like to use this component for a lot of apps. And a lot of these third-party APIs that you hit, they give you the option of getting JSON or XML. And I almost always want JSON. That's like the way to go. So if you, in the header, you're telling that endpoint that I want JSON. So if it has the option of JSON or XML, it's going to send you the JSON, and you're not going to get some random XML response when you're not expecting it. So we just do that by application /JSON. And then the next one is going to be our authorization, which always starts capitalized, authorization. And our authorization is going to be our token. So we want to pass that token if we have it. And this is the way I like to do it. You can stringify and parse things, but when you're dealing with a token, it's normally like already a string. That's the whole point of a JSON web token. It's a stringified token, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, if you're in local storage and you're storing form data like in a JSON-B format or something really large that's a JavaScript object, you would have to stringify that into a string to put it in local storage, because local storage only accepts like primitive type values. Strings, booleans, and numbers. That's all it takes. And then when you bring it back out, then you would have to parse it to use it in your code. Here, because it's a token, we can cheat and use ES6 syntax, backticks, $ curly braces, and it goes. And that's it. That's Axios with auth. Anybody got any questions on that? And this is a copyable cut and paste component that you will use over and over and over again. So don't feel bad if you go to do this. Even if you go to do a sprint this weekend and you go to your project and you go copy, paste. It's the same thing. You're using the same thing. You just be wasting time typing it over, unless you want the practice. Next thing we're going to build is a private route. All right, the private route. This route is it's a common misconception. This is an actual component that we're building. It's a React component, just like if you built like the login component. That's exactly what this is. So you do have to have React. Well, you don't for the new stuff, but some of the projects are older, so we just want to do it anyway. We're going to get that from React. All right, and then we're going to get some stuff from React Router DOM. Anybody know what I might need from React Router DOM? It's a couple things. Well, think about it this way. What do we want this component to do? What's going to be its purpose in life, basically?
You're going to need route and I think redirect.
Yeah, route and redirect, right? Why do we need route?
Because it's going to return a route if we have the authorization for the private router.
That's right. And redirect does exactly what its name says. It's going to redirect if it doesn't. So that's pretty much what's happening there. So we're going to create our component now. We're going to, I'm going to export it, export const, did I name it private? Some of them I name private, some of them I name protected, just changes. Private route, that's going to equal a function without a minus sign. All right, and in here, we're going to go ahead and declare our props, basically. We got to get the props out of the component. And I have a different way of building this too, but I'm not going to confuse you guys with that today. But just as a light note, do you guys remember when you learned React Router for the first time in Unit 2? How they had you using the switch statement and you were able to use route as a nested child and didn't have to use render props? I actually make a React Router component that uses that same system. So you can say protected route, close it up, put your component in between it and not worry about the render prop. I'll share that with you guys. I'll probably post it in the help channel after the recording if you want to check it out. But I'm going to stick to what the school kind of taught. That way, you know, it's just good practice. But this is like the older way of doing React Router. And they do that because you're going to run into it in the field. So they teach you the new way and the old way. And here we're going to grab the stuff that we need out of our props. We're going to need component. So we know we passed it a component prop. This is what we named it when we passed it to private route. That's why it says component. And we're going to declare that as a component with a capital letter because it's going to be a React component. And all React components have to be a capital letter. And then the other thing that we're going to bring in is, this is always looks funny, ... rest, which basically just means the rest of the things, whatever else is in that props, we're gonna pass on through here.
Can you explain very quickly why we do, why we separate out like that component and then rest? I somehow I didn't get it in the lecture. I know it works. I just didn't get why.
The reason why we separate it out is because we have to declare the component as component to make it reusable. So like if we declared a component with a lowercase letter, so like, let me get a little further on this part when we start using it, and I'll really hit home with that. I want to kind of show you visually. So we're going to return, a route. And that route, if I remember right, it closes automatically. It does. Right. It's been a while since I wrote a render prop. But in here, we got the rest. So the rest, that's going to be like your history, your params, all that other stuff that kind of comes with it behind the scenes. That's what rest is kind of doing. And the other part of this we're going to make is the render prop. So we're going to call render, which is a property of router. And in the render prop, if you guys are wondering, I am looking at my cheat sheet because it's been a while. Render props, we're going to name it. Sounds good. Yeah, callback function. Let's open that up. And here we're going to say if, this is where we're going to check our token. Local storage dot get item token. If that's there, we're going to do some things. else we're going to do something else. So we'll just type in else. So if this token exists, we want to return component with a capital C. All right. And this is where we're going to get to that component : component. See, when we're assigning the component prop, when we're passing it into this, like if it was like, let's say the friends list, right? If we declared component here, we would have to destructure it out because it doesn't start with a capital letter. And React won't recognize it as being a component. And we'd also have to use the exact name. This is basically reassigning that as just components. So no matter what component you pass in, whether it be like a friends component, a login component, you know, my bank account records component, it's all going to register component when it gets in this route. So it makes it reusable. That's what's part of the reusability of this. Does that make sense, Gabriel?
Yes.
Cool. All right. And then what we're going to pass into the component is, in case we're passing any props into our component or whatnot, we want to bring them in here. And those are going to be defined by our parameter render props. So whatever we passed into render down here, we're grabbing the component and we're then forwarding that and spreading that out as a props object into that component. And then the else is just going to be, if that token doesn't exist, we're going to redirect. And we're going to redirect to, let's see, where are we going to go? I think this one goes just back to the home route. Oh, I got to return it. That would help. I was like, why does it matter? There we go. That's it. That is your private route with a render prop. So, yeah, any questions on that? All right, so we have our authentication in place now for our whole app. We have ways to handle that token, and we have ways to protect routes that we don't want visible without that token. So now let's go build a login. Let's make a way to log into this app. Right now, all we see is this H1. We've got nothing else. So where's that at? How do I set this up? All right, so let's build our form first. So we're gonna create a form tag, and you are gonna have to build this form on the sprint challenge. It's not gonna be there waiting for you, but it's just a login form. It's just 2 inputs. So I'm gonna give it a label. And this label is going to be user name. And then inside that label, I'm going to give it an input. And if you're wondering why I'm using the label and the input syntax, is I'm already thinking ahead of, for one, accessibility. You know, you kind of want the label for accessibility, screen readers, things like that. But also it makes your life testing that much easier when you nest an input inside of the label. When you nest it inside, you can grab that element by label text and you automatically get access to that input. Now, if you had the label above the input, you would have to use properties like HTML4 and then put an ID on the input to make them kind of tie together so you can grab them for testing. Does that make sense, everybody? Were you guys explain that during testing? Yeah, so wrapping the label. Now, some of the things can change the styling a little bit. There might be reasons why you want to have the label away from the input. And in that case, you have to use HTML4 and the ID, what I'll do is I'll make the second input. I'll make it the other way. It's going to throw the styling off, but that way you guys can actually see it. So now I'll make a label. And this label I'm going to say is password. All right, and then I'll make oh, wow, I broke that thing. Then I'll make an input below it. And just like this. Now, if you had it set up this way to where the label was above the input, you have to actually use an HTML4 in the label. So it'd be HTML4. And we'll set that equal to like password. And then an input, you got to give this an ID with a password. That's what ties those two together. So now you can have like your label up at the top of the page up here, and you can have your input down below 2 other inputs. When you grab it during testing by label text, It's going to automatically target that, look for this ID, and that's the input that you just grabbed to type into. So that's how that works. If you ever run into that to where I can't test this, there's nothing to grab by input. Your first instinct is normally to go put a data test ID, kind of like what they did up here, on that input and grab each one individually. But if you have it just tied together this way, you can just grab it by label text. So we're going to do it the easy way. So we got a username, password. So we have inputs, but we have nothing controlling these inputs yet. So let's go build some functions to control this stuff. We're going to say const handle change. It's going to handle the changing of our application state, or not the application state, but our local state for the form, which I have not implemented yet. I probably should do that. So let's go ahead and set up our states. Bring in use state. I don't know why use effect is in here. I saw that in there on the sprint challenge too, but I don't really, why did I type that twice? I don't really see a reason for it. If you guys find a reason for it doing the sprint, cool, use it. If not, you could do this with just 2 use state hooks real easy. So we're going to say const, we're going to say form, set form. It's going to equal use state. And in here, we'll just create an object that has a username, an empty string, and a password with an empty string. I didn't create like an initial value object for this because I don't ever plan on having to reset the form. Normally when you when you want to reset the form, you want that initial value object so you can unsubmit, it clears itself out. You know, you can set up like a clear method of some kind. This one, I know I'm going to be redirecting somewhere on the login, so why bother? We'll just put it in here, save a little time. The other state I need to handle is my error state. So this has a little error message that they want to pop up. So I'm going to create a state just for that. Use state, and we're going to set this to an empty string for now. And we're going to comment this little error out that they put there. There's text checking down here for the error, which I believe, yeah, it should just be empty until an error actually arises. It's not like the one that you did during the week where the CSS was getting a little funky and you had to do some different things. So here we're just going to handle our form. So we're going to call set form. We're going to spread out the original form. And then we're going to use the good old e.target.name in square brackets and e.target.value. That's our handle change. Now we can go start tying some of these inputs together. So we have username. We're going to give it the name. I always forget the name and wonder why my thing's not working, but this targets that name. So the name always has to be there. And that username needs to match whatever the name of it's going to be of the key in your state. And on change, we're going to set that equal to handle change. And then we're going to give it a value, make this reactful so it's actually displaying the value of state and not the value of the actual browser. And it's going to be form.username. And we're going to do the same thing with the password. Say name equals password. On change. Handle change. Value. Form.password. I'm going to add one more to this just because it's a password field. If you give it a type equal to password, you get, when you type in that field, you get the fancy little dots rather than the word. In case you guys didn't know that. You protect the visibility of the password by doing that. All right, so we have our inputs being handled. That's all taken care of. We don't have a submit button yet. I don't believe. Let's put that in there. So inside our form, we're going to make a button. And we're going to say, what do we call this? Login. That's right, we're logging in. And I'm going to give this a type. Just in case I add another button later, you normally don't have to do this with one button in a form. But in case you have multiples, you always want to pin one that's the actual submit button. This is what's going to submit the form. And then while we're looking at that, we got that down, login, cool. Let's make our handle submit function. So const, let's submit a form. Or login, I should say. Equal, we're going to take in the event. We're going to e.prevent default. We don't want the page to refresh. And now we got to make our API call. And this is why I created the Axios with the auth first. Because even though we're posting something that doesn't require authentication, we can still use it. You know, you can still use it wherever you like. So I like to just, when I create it, I normally use it for everything. So we're going to go grab that. And // nope. Was it? Yeah, there it is. Helpers, Axios with auth. And I'm going to use it down here. So I'm going to say Axios with auth. Post, because we're posting, we're sending data. Now all we need to remember is that little endpoint, which should be just login for this. And then the data that we're going to send, which is the form data. And that's all the data that we typed in here, the username and password that's being stored in this state here. And that's what we're going to pass for our login. That's what the API is going to look at. And then we got the happy path, sad path. .then, we're going to get a response. And this is a good habit to get in here. Console log the response. Before you do anything else, you want to see what you're getting back so you know how to handle it. Are we getting back that token? What's that token look like? Where's that token stored? Is it res.data.user.somebodyelse.user.token? Or is it res.payload? You don't know until you look at the response. And every API is different. So always look at the response, and then you know what to do with your data afterwards. And we're going to console log the error just in case we get one. The error would come. Do I have to show an error on this one? Must include data test ID. Okay, and the error displays if that's right. So we're going to try that out first. Now I'm trying to remember what I set the username and password to. I'm going to go find out. It is student and taco. All right, that's our username and password. And you know what, just for simplicity's sake, we're gonna make it all lowercase, easily hackable. So now we're gonna try, well, first we'll inspect the page just so we can see everything happening. I'm gonna type in student and taco. Hit login. And did we get anything? It refreshed. You know what I forgot? I forgot to tie in submit to the form. On submit equals handle submit. If you ever see a React app refresh, that's immediately should trigger you. I did something wrong. I missed somewhere. Let me go look. Student and taco. Log in. No refresh, and we got some data. Can everybody see this down here in the console? Data. Looks like that's where our token is. Our token is called data.payload. So now we have that in our happy path. We could say local storage.set item. We're going to set the token to res.data.payload. And that should target our token. So at that point, we should get our token and token local storage. And now I'm going to purposely not do this right. to see what my error looks like because it wants me to display an error message. Log in. All right, we got an error. It says request failed, status code 403. You know what? Let's see here. And it wants us to display an error. I wonder if we're getting a cool message from the API. I'm going to show you guys another little trick. If you take this error and you wrap it in an object, when you're console logging it like this, you'll actually get access to the whole error object. And it's got some cool stuff in there you can check out. So this is all the stuff you didn't see when you just console log the error. You get the configuration, the request, the response. You get all kinds of stuff. So let's take a look at what the response says. Oh, response.data.error has a pretty cool message. I say we use that rather than typing one out, right? So let's do that. We're going to, inside of our catch, so to console log in that error, we're going to call set error. Do this, but oh wow, can I name that something different up in state? Yes, ser error. That's awesome. Set error, and we're going to set error to the error. Now we're dot chaining error dot response dot data dot error. So that's the chain of events I had to go through to get to that. And now let's try it and see if it works. Look at that. There's the message from our API. Cool. Any questions on that? All right. Well, our next move is let's set up our routing. Because after we log in successfully, we want to redirect to our members list. We want to see the members that are in the list, right? We're authenticated now. We want to go check that out. So let's go into app and let's get that set up. So right now, all we have is login, and we want to add a private route. So I'm going to add a private route in here. Let's see if it'll automatically import for me. Yay. You know, it did. That's awesome. Private route. And we're going to give this a path. We're going to set that path equal to, we'll call it members. And we're going to give it the component. So this is where that ties in, Gabriel. See, we're naming a component as the prop. And we're setting that equal to some JavaScript, which is going to be our member list. Let's see if I can get that to do it. No, it won't let me do it. All right, let's go ahead and import member list. Import member list from slash, nope, it'll be this dot slash components member list. Now we can put that in there. So this member list actually becomes component inside a private route. And that's what gets rendered in that route that's actually there, where it's component, and we pass it whatever props came along with it. That's how that's working. So now we have a private route. We can go back into our login form, and I'm going to bring in something from React Router DOM called use history. It's a hook that came with they're about I'd say they're about a year old now for React Router DOM, but they make things a lot simpler than the way we used to do that. We used to have to do props.match.params and props.history. This all came from the REST, when we spread out REST in certain components or in the props object itself. Now with the hook, you don't have to. You can just, all we really need is push. So we can say const push equals use history. And boom. Now we have access to the push object. And all we got to do here is after we set our local storage. So keep in mind, you almost always want to push last. Whenever you're writing things out and you know you're going to redirect with push, handle your state changes, handle your storing, everything else. Last thing you do is push. So we're going to push to members. Now we're going to see if this all works or if I broke it. So student, taco, getting hungry. And we went to members. So it works. And we can verify this works by going into our application local storage, clearing that out. And I think I just refreshed the page and it takes me back. Now let's try and manually go to members. Say, I know I was just on members. That's where I want to be. Nope, it shoots me right back to login. So we know our protected route is working properly. We just did what they call a sanity check. It works. We got this. So let's log in. Taco. And we got our token and we're in the members component, which currently has nothing in it. Questions at this point? We're on a roll. We're only like 40 minutes in and we're like I'd say halfway done with the sprint challenge, roughly. So let's go to the member list component. Let's see what's happening in here. A whole lot of nothing. All right. So what do we have to do in the member list component? This would be where we. Okay, this is where we're going to start setting up our list, our functionality and things to like get the members, set them to a state so we can pass them down to the member card and allow us to run our CRUD operations. So we have our member list H1. We're going to call this a list of current members. And then we're going to do our, now this is the tricky part. I'm going to think ahead for when I have to test this, because testing Axios with auth as a direct component, the way it's set up, because it returns like 5 or 6 different methods, whether they're get, put, or whatever, makes it very hard to test and mock that. So we're going to create a helper function. We're going to call it fetch members. So we're basically taking that Axios get request and we're wrapping it in a function in a separate file. So we can just mock that function and make it real easy to test our stuff. Does that make sense? A new file, we'll call this get members.js. And here we're going to import, we're going to need Axios with auth. Should be on the same route. And now we're going to create our function. We're going to say export const, what is this, fetch members, equal a function. That function is going to, I believe, return, does it return Axios with auth? I can't remember. No, I don't think it does. Yeah, it does. Okay. So it's going to return this promise. And it's going to be an Axios with auth promise. It's going to be a .get. That .get is going to be to /members, because that's the route for the API. Then we're going to have the happy path .then. This is going to give us a response, and all I'm going to do is forward this response as a return. That's all you got to type in there. That's what they call an implicit return. It's going to say .then. If this is successful, take the response and return it with that promise, the whole thing. We don't have to destructure out. We don't have to type return. Don't have to do anything. And you can do the same thing with the error. You can say .catch, because we might have error handling that we want to promise chain where we use this function. So we want those promises to be resolved or rejected outside of this. So we're going to say error and just return error. And this, with doing it this way allows us, as you'll see in a minute, to grab that in a promise chaining condition. So here where I'm going to import, that was fetch members from // helpers get members. And then we're going to run a use effect. Let me grab some use effect and some use state in here. Here we're going to use effect, callback. Don't ever never forget the dependency array. Don't want to bang our API and get the mess of bills. And now all I have to do is say fetch members invoked dot then response, and this works just like your Axios with auth would. Console log the response, and dot catch. We're gonna get our error, and we're gonna console log the error. So where I'm getting the dot then and dot catch like this is because in my get members, I return the whole Axios instance, which basically returns a promise, is what it's doing. If the promise resolves, this gets returned, which also then turns into this one. So those are the same. If it errors, it rejects the promise, it's going to forward that just because of this quick little function to where it's going to hit this dot catch block and show us here. Any questions on that? Basically just forwarding promises, rejection resolution, and the promise itself. Just carrying all that outside of the function, just to make it easier to test. That's really its only purpose at this point. So let's try it. Let's refresh the page and see what we get. Let's go to the console. We got an array of 1. It was successful. So array data. Oh, look, it's me. So we know we're working. So let's handle this stuff. Let's create some state for it. Const members, set members. Some of the stuff I'm typing might already be boilerplated for the sprint challenge too, but I'm not 100% sure. Let's see what else I need in that members list. I dry ran this like late last night. I was a little tired. All right. Oh, I did some conditional fun here. So this is going to look a little different, but it'll kind of give you the idea. So I'm going to say const, this is going to be add member and set add member. This is going to be equal to use state. And this is where I'm going to, if I want to add a member, I conditionally render the form within the same component. So I'm going to use this to trigger that. And then I got one more, which is the member to edit. So the member to edit is also going to be carrying its own state. Member to edit. And I'm going to use this state to populate my form. So I can use the same form to add as I will to edit. I can populate that form's values on the edit method for my put request by just monitoring this state. This is going to be use state, and this is going to be null right now. So we have those in place. Let's go ahead and run our map method and return our members. We got to bring in our members component though. That'd be our member card. Okay, we're going to come down here under the H1. We're going to use some curly braces because we got JavaScript. We're going to say members.map. And in here, we're going to say for each member, we're going to return a member card. Member card, if I remember right, takes a prop of the member. I know I want to give it a key so React doesn't yell at me. Member ID. And I want to pass set member to edit to this. Because I already know, just because I did this just the other day, sometimes you might have to explore it. But my edit button, like to trigger the edit, like I'm on this member, I want to edit this member, is going to be in this member card. So I want to be able to trigger that in this state. Let's save that. Nothing blew up, but we did not get a member yet because I haven't done anything with this. Response.data is what I need. So we're going to say set members. Response.data. Now I broke. Why am I not seeing my members? Did I not do the member card? Oh, I did nothing with the member card? Shame on me. All right, let's fix this real quick. So we're going to say props. The const, we need the name and the unit from props. Come down here. That H1 is probably a little ridiculous. We'll make it an H3. And in here, we're going to say name. This is going to be the JavaScript for name. And we'll give it like a P tag for the unit. And now we don't have anything yet. Why? Oh, props.members. That's why. There we go. Now we got the name showing up. Everything's good there. All right, so we got everything showing. We're doing our GET request. We're protected. We've got all that going for us. Now all we have left to do is our CRUD operations. So our add, put, and delete, and the testing, and then we're done. So the next thing I'm gonna move on to is the CRUD operations. So I'm gonna start by let's bring in the member form. We're gonna go back to the member list. We want to get the member form. Slash member form. And now I want this member form to like trigger. I want it to be, I'm going to play with some conditional rendering. So I'm going to have a button here that's basically going to say add a member. If you want to add a member, it's going to like remove the members and then show the form. And when you add the member, it's going to go back. And we're going to do that with conditional rendering just for practice and some fun. So I got add member up here. I'm going to use that to trigger some more JavaScript in my JSX. I'm going to say add member. If add member is there, then I'm going to render my member form. My member form takes in a series of props. What do I need? I need a set add member, because after my form completes, I'm going to want to set that back so it goes away. And oh yeah, set members. And you're going to see why I need set members in just a bit. You would think, why do you need set members from the form? Aren't we using an API? We are. But there is something about that a lot of people forget. So this is only going to show up if that's there. And now, let's see, we got add member. We need a button. I'm going to put a button down below this, but not inside of there. Let's make a button. And we'll name this button member. All right, we got to add a member button. Cool. Actually, you know what? That looks better on the above that. I think it looks good. Yeah, that looks a little better. So now when we add a member, I want to trigger this to go off. And I want my member list, I believe, to... No, we'll keep the member list there. We'll just trigger that to go off. So I'm going to add an onClick to this. Say onClick equals function. And what we're going to do is call it back and say set add member We're gonna set add member to true. This fires off. So now if I click this add member button, I should see a form. And I'm not seeing a form. Why am I not seeing a form? Did I not build the form either? I didn't build the form. All right, just for being quick about it, I do this. Those are my form inputs. And it's going to be a similar thing. We're going to need state and stuff in here. So let's get our form showing up. Use state. And that should be all I need here. Form. Set form. Use state. And oh, I got creative there. So I'll have to get to that later. We're going to say name equals an empty string, and unit is going to be an empty string. We have that. We're going to need our handle changes, which looks just like any other handle change. They're both the same. There's that. And handle save, handle delete. We're not there yet. We're not there yet, but we're almost there. I just want to see this form pop up when I hit that. And remember. Okay, so we have a form. Takes name, unit, save, and delete buttons. So our save is obviously our post. Our delete is going to be our delete, but we haven't done the edit portion yet. So we're going to make this add. So we're going to go ahead and handle the save. So I'll write the handle save method. Function that's going to take in the event. And here we're going to e.prevent default. Let's fix my typo. And we're going to need Axios with auth. Got Axios with auth. So in here, Axios with auth. It's going to be a dot. Ooh, I got creative on that one. Wait, well, we'll add that later. Dot post. We're going to be posting to /members. We're going to be sending in our form to add that member. We're going to have the dot then, which is the happy path. Catch. Error path. Phone just won't stop. A log error. All right, so we have our handle saved. Let's tie that into our form. On submit equals handle save. Got that. Let's add a member and see if it happens. Add a member. Name Barry. Barry is going to be our member, and he's in unit 3. We're going to click save. I got the array back at 2, but my name's only at 1. I don't like that. Anybody know why? I bet you already ran into this before, haven't you?
You have to add it to the original database, right?
Well, we added it to the API. The difference is we have to change our application state to mimic what's in the API. So we haven't done that yet. Lucky for us, we are getting a whole array. So we don't need any array methods or anything. This is like our whole members data that we're getting back. All we have to do is call through props our state setter for application state and set it to the new array. If that's what you're getting at, Barry, I might have just worded it a little differently. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I was wrong. You're right. I was thinking of something different. You're good.
Cool. All right. So I believe I passed that as a prop. So we're going to go in our member list and check. And set members is a prop. That's why it's there. So we're going to here say props dot set members to the response dot. It looks like it's response dot data, and then I got to go up here and bring in props because I didn't do that yet. Now it should work. Add a member. Barry, unit 3, save, and bam, reactive. We updated the API, local state, everything's in sync, working well. So we got that. The only thing we have to do is we got to shut our form back off after we add a member. We don't want to see that after we do that. So we're going to go props, set add member to. Now that should work as expected. 3, save, and it's back off. So a little conditional rendering fun, using the form, adding people. There's our create portion of the CRUD. We got create and read down. We're gonna do update and delete. So next one we're gonna do is update. Let's take care of our update logic. We're gonna go back into our member list. And in our member list, let me check the cheat sheet here. Yeah, I'm going to use this same form. So this member form, I only like to write things once. I'm going to use that for the update, the editing as well. And it's going to get a little interesting looking. So here I'm just going to write some raw JavaScript. I'm going to say member to edit. So I'm going to check that member to edit variable that's up above me to see what it's at, if it has anything in it. If it's there, I want to return, and the curly braces are like an implicit return. I'm going to return member form, and I'm going to return that member form with member to edit. As a prop. And what else do I need? Oh, I need quite a few for this one. I need set member to edit. This one might run off the old screen a little bit. I need my members array. I'm also going to need my set members method because I want to be able to set that state. So this is like, I don't know why I put a comma in there, like too much C#. This is me planning ahead, knowing that I'm going to have to reactively change my local state after this method comes through. So I'm passing it up with all those props, and it just got mad just because I'm not done. Okay. So it's getting mad because I have this question mark with no else. So that's what I'm returning. Now I'm going to say else. My else return is going to be this button. I think that looks right. That looks like what I had. Yeah. So basically when my member to edit is populated, my form is going to show up and that button is going to disappear. Does that make sense? And also when my member to edit, I got to find a way to, how do we know the member is editing? How do you know which member you're going to edit? I'm going to go back into my member card. There's a little div right here. And I believe I passed that as a prop from the list. Let me make sure. Yeah, set member to edit. So that's what we're going to use. I'm going to go to my card, and I'm just going to put an onClick right on the div. onClick is going to equal props dot Oh, I gotta call it back. I gotta put a call back in here because I'm gonna be using the function in here. If not, it'll loop. Props dot set member to edit. I'm gonna set member to edit to props dot member. Any questions on what's happening right here? Going once, going twice. All right, moving on. But to explain, just to clarify, is I've made an on-click for the whole div that contains that member. And when I click on it, it's going to give me the option to edit it. That's basically what all that's doing. So let's go back to our member list, see what's happening there. We got everybody here. Let's add a member. Let's run through the app a little more, try some things. Let's add Gabriel. And we're going to put him in unit 3. Save. We got Gabriel. Now I want to edit Gabriel. I click, my button went away, my form's back. I'm going to make Gabriel, like Gabriel Ferry. And then I'm going to click the same save button. But what's going to happen now, though, I haven't told my form to do anything about it. So it's going to take this and just add one. So we didn't edit, we created a post request again. So now we have to go implement that logic in our form to the update and check the conditions that way so we could reuse the form. So here we have a handle save. I'll go away, zoom, member form. And how did I do that? Oh, that was actually a pretty cool way I did that. So I created a conditional on handle save. I like my conditionals for some reason. It was fun. So we're passing member to edit into the form. Let's verify that. Member form is getting member to edit. So it's there. So we're going to say if props dot member to edit if member to edit is there, we're going to run some code. Else, we're going to run this post request stuff. So I'm basically changing this function right now to where it's going to be a post and a put function at the same time. But I got to think about my initial state before I do that. So I want my initial state to populate with the member if it's there. So how am I going to do that? I'm just going to say props.member to edit. Or the empty one. So now if we pass a member to edit into this component, I got to capitalize that E. If we pass that in, it's going to populate right in our form. If we don't pass anybody in, it's not going to populate. So let's go ahead and add a member. We're going to add Barry, unit 3, save. There he is. I'm going to click on him. He populates. Okay. Gabriel, and that should save and do nothing. So doing nothing's good. That means my if caught. So my if statement, I'm just going to say Axios with off again. And this is going to be a put request. Put request to the, oh, it's not supposed to be inside there. And we're going to send that to the same route. And that put request is going to take our form data, just like the other one. We're going to have a dot then response. So log the response. Dot catch. Error. So log the error. We have both those running. I'm going to ditch this console log because we know that works already. However, we're not totally cluttered. Add member, Barry. And if I'm not using your name, I'm sorry. I'm just kind of trying to go through it. And we're going to edit Barry to Xavier. And save. And I should see a response down And I do, but it's not a good one. Put request to API members failed to fetch. Why did it fail to fetch? What I missed on that one? That's mighty. Right, I mean, so I forgot some things on the put request. I got a little ahead of myself. We got to give it an ID in the URL. So this is going to be $ curly braces, and we need
Are you
the
changing the wrong one?
Yes, I am. Good call. I was totally changing the wrong one. We'd have found that out eventually, right? Member / $ curly braces, and whatever ID we need to target. Now we're getting our member to edit passed in. So that's pretty much all we need. We need props, member to edit, .id. So the editing member, that ID is going to come in. This should fly now. Live debugging. Save. Edit that. Save successful response. Yay, successful response. What did we get back? Oh, we got back the edited object. Nothing else, just the edited object. So we got to do something with that. What we're going to do is, did I pass the original members into the form? Yeah, so I have the members, because we're going to use an array method to reactively update our local state when this happens. So props dot set members. What this is going to be is going to be props dot members dot map, and for each member, we're going to say if the member dot ID. So each member that we're mapping over that already is there, that is equal to, and I'll give you a tip on this too, because I run into it a lot. This ID down here, depending on which API you're using, there is a good chance that that number could come back as a string number, and that'll throw off some of your conditional checking. So you always want to use number, the number method from math, and we're going to check the response.data.id. So we're basically checking each of our existing members that are in this array as this loop runs to see if one of their IDs matches this response we got back to the number. And if it does, we're going to replace it. We're going to replace it in that array with our response, just because we have that response. We're going to use what the API gave us. And if it doesn't, or else, so all the other members of their array, we're just going to return that member. And let's give it a try. So name, Xavier, unit 3, save him. We're going to edit. We'll go back to Barry. Barry's name's easy to type, so I keep going to Barry. And then I'm going to click save that again, and we should see it revert back to Barry reactively. So I updated the API and updated our state immediately. Any questions on that? All right, moving on. So we got the CRU of CRUD done. We have one more left. We have delete left, which is in the same component. I got a delete button down here. We're going to create a method for that. Let's say const handle delete. That's going to equal a function. We're going to, do I have to prevent default for that one? Yeah, I better just be safe. Okay, prevent default. Anytime you're dealing with forms, I guess it's better safe than sorry. You never know what's going to happen. We're going to Axios with auth. We're going to send a delete request, authenticated one. .delete. Our delete route is going to be, looks like members. Looks like the same one. slash, and then we got to send that an ID so it knows what to delete, and that's going to be the same thing. I can get that from props, or actually I can get that right from the form. Yeah, we could. Yeah, it's probably better to get it from props. ID. I could, because I'm setting the up here, if that exists, I'm setting it to the form. I could have just as easily said form.id here, and it had done the same thing. It grabbed the same number. So now that we have that, we're going to have the happy path. I never knew it was the happy path till I heard Josh start calling it the happy path. I'm like, I like that. I'll start using that. Dot catch. I have an error. Log the error. And then I'm just going to tie that into my delete button here. So on click, I'm going to call a function. Actually, I don't even have to pass that. I can just say handle delete. That should fly. So now this will delete a member. Delete's probably like the easiest one to do. You just basically send it the matching ID and it's gone. So I'm going to add some names here. We'll add another member. We're going to add, we'll add Tommy. Making them up now, unit 4. And I'm going to delete Tommy. Tommy was a mistake. We got to delete Tommy. So let's click on Tommy and see what my response is. Did I not get one? Oh, I got it. Yeah, okay. So I clicked on Tommy, so my form popped up with my delete button. Delete. All right, here we go. We got data 13. Oh, so all it gives me is my number for the ID. And remember what I told you guys about possibly getting a string value back? There is a prime example. Delete just gave me the ID back in string form. So that's where that number comes into play, and always knowing your data. So here I'm going to put the logic in for that. It's going to be another one, props.set members. I got to reactively set my members depending on my API and what I get back. And this one's going to be props.members.filter. For each member in there, I only want to return the one with the member ID that is not equal to number response dot data. So that should filter that out. And when we do this again, in a minute here, I'm going to make these buttons work a little better too if we got time. Let's see, I'll add Chad for unit 4. Barry again. Oh, why did it not type? Come on now. Barry 3. And I'm going to try and erase Chad and see what happens. I clicked on Chad. I want to delete Chad. Chad's gone. There's delete reactively through state. Any questions on that? That's CRUD. All of it. Nobody? I figured I'd have confused somebody by now. All right, cool. So there's one last portion, one last tiny little bit. This is everything the Sprint has to offer but testing. So we got to write some tests. And the tests they're going to want you to run are going to be on, they call it like the bubble page component. But what it is, it's the component where you're making this API call. They want you to test that and make sure things show up. So we're going to write some tests for that and show you how to mock that out. So we'll go into our members list test. And you can see I have 2 tests written in here already. They're just kind of boilerplated. This is almost a copy of what you're going to see over the weekend. You're going to see 2 tests. One's going to be render with errors, and one's going to be render the list of members, render list with members. So you're going to have to create some mock data make sure your component works. So the first thing we have to do is we have to import our member list. You have to import whatever component you are testing into that test file. And the next thing I'm going to grab is my function I know I need to mock. And don't ever, people will say, don't look at the component when you're testing it. You have to. You always want to look back and forth. See what that component depends on. As my dog loses his mind. See what that component depends on. So you know what kind of data you have to get it, what you might have to mock out. And you can already see that it's dependent on the fetch members to populate an array to show some data. So we're going to go ahead and import that as well. We're going to import fetch members. I think that's what I named it, right? I named it get members. And we're going to import it as mock members. We'll call them mock members. This is where you basically rename it. We're going to get that from /, and we're going to navigate through to our helpers, and there it is. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to run a method called just mock. But before I do that, I'm going to write a test because I want to show you guys something. So this test is renders list without errors. So I immediately think right away, well, that's easy enough to do. You just call render. We're going to render the member list. Yeah, that renders without errors, right? Let's find out. Let's go and let me add a terminal to this and test it. npm npmt, which npmt is shorthand for test, running the test. And it's going to run the test and it's probably going to say, hey, everything's good. You're good to go. Yeah, 2 total test passes. Everything's great. I got some error console logs in my app. I probably should get rid of them. That one's on the mocks handlers. Ooh, let's go get rid of that. And it's helper, mocks handlers, line 16. Yeah, let's fix that guy. That's probably me putting this thing together that caused that. Sorry. But yeah, we see 2 tests pass. And if we run that, there's a really cool tool that comes with the screen object called debug. It allows you to see the printed DOM as the test sees it. So now when I run this test, I will see basically a bunch of HTML down here. And this is exactly what the test sees at this point. This is all that it sees. It sees it's got an H1 with a list of members and a button that says add a member. That's all that sees. So this comes in handy if you move this screen debug call around as you're writing your test. You can actually see the states that your component are in as you start running your assertions, expect, such to be in a document or whatnot. You can tell if it's actually there, or if it's not there, go figure out why. But the reason why I wanted to show you this is because I'm about to probably break it. So I'm going to say just.mock. Because I know I got to mock for the second one, right? I got to get that data in there. So I'm going to have to mock the route. And mock is going to be .. helpers / get members, which is basically a carbon copy of this route right here. So I'm going to call it just mock, and I'm going to save this. And it should blow up. And it did. So what happened here is even though we're trying to render a list without errors, it's saying it cannot read property.then of undefined. Because when we bring in the mock globally, it's going to mock for every test written in that file. So right away, we're breaking this test because we're not resolving that promise. It doesn't know what to do with .then. So if you want to just check that renders a list without errors, you would come in here and say, what is it? Mock members. So I'm calling that function. I'm going to say mock resolve value once. And I'm just going to resolve that value to, now remember this resolution, when you mock a resolve value, you're resolving that promise of that function that you're mocking. So if we go to this member list, we're faking this and we're resolving to .then. So .then has a response object. All right. The response object is the data that we're going to put in there and that we're going to mock. And we can see that it has a data key. So we know we need to have data somewhere in that object for this thing to function. And we know that data is an array of some kind. So we're going to mock this out right in here with an object. That's our response, our res. We're going to give it a data key. That data key directly matches data right here. And then I'm going to give it a value of an empty array. And this should fly. Might make me a liar. Let's see. Mock resolve. Why did I misspell that something? Yeah, mock resolve. I must have misspelled something here. What did I do? I'm looking at my. Oh, is it because I didn't async it? No, it shouldn't make a difference. Mock that. Yeah, that blew up. It's making a liar out of me. Let me try to async it. Maybe that's what it needs. Sometimes asyncing them is the best way to go. That's not it.
Do you need to render it as a prop in member list?
I shouldn't. It should. The member list isn't dependent on the prop. It's dependent on the API call coming back. And this worked yesterday. I got to figure out why it's not working. I'm missing something. It might be in the file path. Let's see. Get members. Let me take a look at get members. Fetch, return Axios. I named it fetch members. And let's see here. That's breaking in the member list. So I basically what I did is I threw my naming off and that was throwing the test off. It was still trying to mock it because the mock points to the file path, but because it's an implicit name, it wasn't resolving anything. And there we go, all bad. So naming is everything in JavaScript. So I render just like I did before. The only difference is that now that we're mocking this file path, anything that's called from this file path or out of this function is going to be mocked. And it matches with this mock that we brought in. So I resolve the value. So I'm resolving this. Resolving means .then. We get back a response object. That response object has a data key. We're setting it to members. I can already see that members is an empty array. I just want to render this just like that. So that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm just setting it as an empty array, just so it renders with no information. And that's what we have. We have a render with no information. So now we can run a matcher like that. We could say, add a member. What can we grab here? We can probably do a not to be in the document. But before I do that, I'm going to write the other test so I know what's in the document so I can check to see what's not, if that makes sense. So let's write this test. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to mock. I know we're going to have to mock the members. And when you say mock resolve value once, that means you're only mocking that resolve value for that test. If you say mock resolve value, those will stack up in the stack as your test, right? So you'll have like 4 tests down where you mock the resolve value, but you changed it and you'll get an error and you're trying to figure out why. That's because RTL is keeping track of all the mock resolve values of that file path. So if you do it once, it's like, that's the only time it does it. And here I want to create some data. So I'm gonna come up here. I'm gonna say const test data. It's gonna equal an object. It's gonna have a data key. similar to what we're just trying to match everything before. That data key is data array is gonna have an object in it. That's gonna have a name. That's going to be me. And it's going to have a unit. It's going to be, yeah, we'll give it 3. So I got some test data. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to drop that test data right in here. Then I'm going to call render. We're going to render the members list. We'll call screen.debug. This is another thing that's going to, it's kind of a little tricky too. So this test is probably going to pass, probably going to throw up a bunch of red, but it did really. Oh wait, there it is, a bunch of red. And what this is this is a common error that a lot of people see with React testing library. Is saying act. You got to wrap your component in act because there is an unmonitored state change is basically what it is. I would tell you 99 times out of 100 when you see this, you do not have to wrap your component with act. That is a bad error. It's basically telling you that the state changed and you didn't write a test for the state being changed. That's all it's saying. The act, ignore that stuff. But you'll notice that my data came back. Everything was good in the data for the console log. That was my response data. But I didn't get my members. And this is a little secret I like to use. We're gonna bring in wait for, but I use wait for a little differently than most people. So if I want to see that state change, I'm just gonna call wait for here. I gotta await it, and you're gonna get this little message like lit up under wait for the async await saying that it has no effect. It does. That is bad. That is a linter error. Actually, no, it was good. Sometimes it lights up saying async await has no effect on this. Just by calling wait for and moving screen debug down, I got my name now. So I didn't have to put anything in wait for. I didn't have to do anything with it. I just put an anonymous empty callback in there just to see my stuff. But I still have this expect, this act method. And we can make act going away just by writing an assertion. So we could say, let's say, expect screen dot get by text. Get by text. We'll use the little regex expression. I'm gonna look for Chris. I'm looking for Chris. And I'm gonna say dot to have text content of Chris capitalized. That should pass. Should fly. And it does. And if you look, oh, that act still went away. Or it still showed up. It shouldn't be. Maybe I gotta put that up in here. Oh, wrong button. Normally when you test for a state change, it's good. Might still be mad. Is it still mad? It's still mad. Oh, it's because I didn't write one up here. That's what it is. I actually changed the state up here. So I'm going to do the, both these tests pass. So you can write that in the wait for. That's technically how it's supposed to work. But I like to just call wait for and then run them afterwards and check everything. So here I'm going to fix that act warning by the first one. So I got to check for something after the test. So I'm going to say expect. It's a real simple test. It's going to make sense. Screen. Get by text content or get by text. And I can't spell screen. We're gonna go look for Chris again. And we're gonna say dot not to dot to be in the document. I need to wait for it. I did make a state change, even though it was just an empty array. It picks up the state change and says no. So these both should pass. Oh, list renders without errors. Why'd I get an error? What's it say? What did I miss? We'll wait for it. Unable to find. Oh, that's right. I gotta do. Was it find by? I believe, right? Find by text. No. Query.
Query, isn't it?
Yeah, one of the three. I'm gonna just type them in until I find one that hits. Query by text. There we go. So we got not to be in the document. And if you look now, our red act warning went away because we wrote tests for after a state update, which this mock result value wrote a state update. And technically, sprint challenge speaking, that is done. Any questions?
Not directly about your code, but I noticed when you did the delete, like your not equal sign looked unique.
Yeah, I use a font called Fire Code. So like if you look at my fat arrow
Okay.
functions, they look different too.
Yeah, okay. So it was just a font. Okay.
Yeah, like if I type in strict equal, it makes 3 lines. Double equal kind of puts them together.
Okay.
Not equal
Yeah,
puts a line through it.
Yeah, I was curious how that happened.
Yeah, it's called Fire Code. I liked it. I thought it was cool when I first started writing this stuff, and it's kind of stuck. I've used it ever since.
No, I did. It is cool. I'm surprised they don't have an extension for that.
They kind of do. It's which one was it? It was part of you still had to do some installation for the font and stuff, but it was this dark plus regular theme.
Oh, okay.
You get that, and it's got Fire Code support in it. And then you actually, depending on how your system works, you have to download the Fire Code font, which is just like downloading any other kind of font. And then it works.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah. But that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording. And I think I just stopped the share and not the recording. I'm sorry. Let me